Jacinda Ardern.
Mr.
I was just checking.
And fair enough too, Mr. Chair, that you check if the government might like to make a contribution on this bill. I want to speak, Mr. Chair, specifically to Part 2, Clause 29. And this specific clause empowers, by order in council, ministers to make a recommendation to the Governor-General which would authorise a government agency to require an eligible entity or class of eligible entity to register for a New Zealand business number. This does go to the heart of some of the substantive debate that we've had in this House this afternoon around at what point and to what degree do you compel agencies to adopt the NZBN in order for it to achieve its stated goals. I spent my first contribution talking about the fact that in order to achieve the purpose clause, to reduce transaction costs for business, to improve costs for government as well, actually we need a wide-ranging number of government agencies and entities to take up the NZBN. And the government's reluctance to put a timeline around that really will destabilise the ability of this bill to achieve its goals. Clause 29, though, does empower to a certain degree the government to kind of compel that to happen. Under Clause 29, 2, it states, before making a recommendation under subsection 1, the Minister must A, consult the Privacy Commissioner, obviously taking into account privacy effects, B, have regard to the following matters: the advantages and disadvantages for eligible entities of the authorisation and the potential effects of the authorisation on the government agency's costs. But I'm disappointed there not to see consideration given to the cost to business of an agency or entity not taking up the NZBN. So we're concerned here in this clause around the cost to an agency but not to business. And yet, it's cost to business that drives the entire purpose of this bill. That seems to me to be a drafting oversight, that if we're going to do a cost-benefit analysis on whether or not an agency or entity should be compelled to take up an NZBN, and we're interested in the cost to them, but we're not on the flip side interested in the cost to business. That seems, again, slightly counter to the stated purpose of the bill. I also wanted, though, to raise a submission that hasn't been discussed up until now by a group called GS1 New Zealand. For those of you who aren't familiar with GS1, I'll read directly from their submission. GS1 New Zealand is a partner of the government for the NZBN registry. NZBN identifiers are GS1 global location numbers, brackets GLNs provided by GS1. And we have been very involved in the consultation process and implementation of the NZBN. Under the partnership with the government, all public data from the NZBN registry is mirrored into GS1, New Zealand's registries, and thereby syndicated around the world. GS1 New Zealand represents over 5,000 organisational members, and they submitted to the NZBN discussion document. A partner to government in delivering the NZBN, obviously fundamental to the implementation of this bill, and the fact that it obviously syndicates out more broadly. They are more than just a partner, they are a delivery mechanism. Well, they set out in their submission some specific views on Clause 29, which I've just referred to. They state, quote, in reference to Clause 29, our view, in alignment with our point 1 above, agencies should be encouraged to mandate the use of an NZBN in transactions with business as early as practically possible. As early as practically possible. They identify uptake as being one of the key turning points on how well this piece of legislation and this whole policy will work. And as I've said, they're not just an interested party, they are partners essentially in the delivery of the NZBN. So, Mr. Chair, I think that we've really used committee stages to highlight, A, the potential we see, but B, the pitfalls with this piece of legislation.